Here are the top stories for today, February 13, 2020. Malacanang expects ties between the Philippines and the United States to remain warm despite the cancellation of the Visiting Forces Agreement. President Duterte vows to prevent any possible abuse of privileges by the Philippine media. Senator Francis Tolentino wants indigenous peoples to have a fair chance to be part of the police and military. And authorities identify a new person under investigation for COVID-19 infection in Negros Oriental. Good day, I'm Bench Bondok. Welcome to the PNA Newsroom. We begin with the developments on the termination of the VFA. The Department of National Defense on Thursday said military exercises with American forces scheduled for this year will continue despite the termination of the Visiting Forces Agreement. Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana says this year's planned military exercises with the Americans shall proceed as scheduled within the 180 days that the VFA remains in force. However, Lorenzana said the United States always has the option to cancel military drills planned for 2020 before the lapse of the 180-day period. Earlier, President Rodrigo Duterte ordered Foreign Affairs Secretary Teodoro Locsin Jr. to send a formal notification to Washington, D.C. regarding Manila's decision to revoke the VFA. On Tuesday, Locsin announced that a formal termination notice has already been received by the U.S. government. The VFA's effectivity will end 180 days from the day the U.S. formally received the formal notice from the Philippines. The agreement exempts American forces from passport and visa regulations and allows them to use their permits and licenses in the Philippines. It also gives the U.S. jurisdiction over its troops who committed unlawful acts in the Philippines unless these crimes can be punished in the host country. In related news, U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper claims that Manila's decision to terminate the Visiting Forces Agreement with Washington, D.C. would be a move in the wrong direction. Malacanang said Esper's remarks are expected. Our Ruth Abigita Carlos has the story.
Malacanang on Wednesday said, "It is not surprising for U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper to claim that Manila's looming termination of the VFA with Washington, D.C. would be a move in the wrong direction." Presidential spokesperson Sal Panelo said, "The termination of the VFA would stop the Philippines from being a parasite to the U.S., especially when it comes to protecting our independence and sovereignty." He reiterated that abrogating the military deal with the U.S. was intended to pursue Duterte's independent foreign policy. He also said the Philippines' relations with other countries are anchored solely on national interests and the general welfare of our people. In a palace press briefing on Tuesday, Panelo said the Philippines hopes for warmer ties with the U.S. as Washington, D.C. is expected to give preferential attention to Manila following the revocation of the VFA. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Ruth Abigita Carlos.
Shifting gears now, President Rodrigo Duterte guaranteed the Philippine media that his administration will not allow any possible abuse of privileges vested in them. Laid Kabagani has more.
President Rodrigo Duterte assured on Wednesday that he will not tolerate any abuse of the privilege pertaining to the function of broadcast media. He made the assurance as the 25-year legislative franchise of ABS-CBN Corporation is set to expire on March 30, 2020.
While our Constitution upholds the freedom of the press, the function of broadcast is privilege granted by government. It is imbued with the best interest of the nation and our people. We will not tolerate any abuse of the privilege.
At the event, Duterte lauded the KBP for elevating the standards of broadcasting and helping promote positive social change. He also acknowledged the group's efforts to disseminate information that helps bring progress to the country as well as to foster improved business practices within the media industry. Duterte also told the media to continue reporting the truth, even if doing so could destroy him. He reminded them that writing an impartial report is necessary because the public needs to be updated of what is happening in the country.
If the truth will destroy me, so be it. Huwag kayong mag-isip-isip pa kung ano. If the truth will masisira ako, that's the price of being in public service. But I assure you, it could be something else except money.
For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Laid Kabagani.
Isabela Representative Antonio Albano said the apparent rift between President Rodrigo Duterte and broadcast network ABS-CBN is putting pressure on congressmen. Albano, who is the House Legislative Franchises Vice Chairperson, admitted that the pressure from the president is coming from his grievances against ABS-CBN's failure to run his campaign advertisements for the 2016 presidential race. However, Malacanang on Wednesday said the Congress need not consider President Duterte's displeasure against ABS-CBN. Speaking to Palace reporters, presidential spokesperson Salvador Panelo denied that Duterte was pressuring lawmakers to derail the franchise renewal of the embattled broadcasting firm. Panelo stressed that Congress has the sole authority to decide on the fate of ABS-CBN. He said Congress can overturn Duterte's decision in the event that the chief executive wields his veto power on the franchise renewal of the local media giant. President Rodrigo Duterte is said to review Taiwan's appeal to lift the travel ban, and the Department of Health assures that patients under quarantine are being provided with proper medical care. More details from Rom Dulfo.
President Duterte will look into Taiwan's appeal to lift its inclusion in the temporary travel ban imposed to contain the spread of the coronavirus disease 2019. Malacanang said the decision to include Taiwan in the travel ban was based on the recommendation of the Health Department. Taiwan has 18 confirmed cases of COVID-19. According to the Labor Department, there are approximately 120,000 documented and 20,000 undocumented Filipino workers in Taiwan. In other news, the Department of Health reports that 2 repatriates from Wuhan in China under quarantine were brought to the hospital due to diarrhea and abdominal discomfort. Health Undersecretary Eric Domingo assured that all repatriates are checked twice daily and are provided with activities to keep them busy and lessen their boredom. Domingo said there are currently 238 persons under investigation or PUI in the country. Meanwhile, the Philippine Navy is doing its part in containing the spread of the coronavirus disease 2019 through the conduct of regular troop information and education for all personnel. All information campaign is being conducted by personnel from Philippine Navy hospitals and other medical units, and barracks are allocated for personnel who might fall under the disease. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Rom Dulfo.
Still to come, Senator Francis Tolentino wants indigenous peoples to have a fair chance to be a part of the police and military. And establishments in Baguio City report losses due to cancellations amid fears of the COVID-19 outbreak. These stories are next when the PNA Newsroom continues.
To my fellow Filipinos, today we face the very grave threat of the novel coronavirus disease 2019 or COVID-19. As of now, there are only 3 confirmed cases of COVID-19 infection. None of those infected is a Filipino national. There is no evidence yet of local community transmission here in our country. The government, together with the World Health Organization, medical societies, and partners in private sector, is addressing the challenge and preparing for any eventuality. Last Sunday, we repatriated several of our countrymen from the affected areas in China. The government is taking care of them while they are in quarantine. To our kababayans who remain in lockdown areas in China, I assure you that the government is ready to bring you home if you want. Hindi naman kayo papabayaan. To my fellow Filipinos, I understand that many of you are worried about the world health and the well-being of our loved ones. It is normal to feel anxious, concerned, and even afraid. Maging malinis. Hugasan yung kamay frequently, yung paulit-ulit. Kung every handshake mo, kung may umatsing ka, takpan mo bunganga mo at tingnan mo at hindi ka makahawa sa ibang tao. Kung ikaw naman ay may ubo, magmask ka na lang. Maging maingat at yung mga impormasyon na importante na manggaling sa WHO ay ating pakinggan. At huwag makinig dyan sa mga haka-haka. Sa gobyerno kayo nakatutok. Nandyan ang totoo sa gobyerno. Wala dyan sa mga taong haka-haka na wala namang ginawa kung hindi manakot para kapwa niya tao. I call on our people to remain calm, vigilant, responsible, and I also ask your trust and cooperation. Support as we face the challenge. Tayo ay magkaisa, together as one nation. This challenge can be overcome. Maraming salamat po.
Senator Francis Tolentino on Wednesday urged concerned government agencies to give indigenous peoples fair chance to get hired and be a part of the Philippine National Police and the Armed Forces of the Philippines. Tolentino cited Senate Bill 405, otherwise known as the Katutubong Tagapagtanggol Act of 2019, which he filed in response to the existing and continuing discrimination against IPs due to their culture and certain physical factors. Under the proposed measure, the Philippine Military Academy and the Philippine National Police Academy are mandated to admit and enlist members of indigenous peoples into their academic program. The bill aims to exempt IPs from height, body mass index, and general point average as part of the admission requirements. Tattoos, piercing, and physical deformities as disqualifications will be waived as well, provided that the features were brought about by their culture, customs, and traditions. The bill also gives protection to IPs from any forms of discrimination or slurs, with dismissal from the service being the highest form of penalty to violators. The group Hands Off Our Children denounced the left-leaning group's misleading information related to the recent arrest of 5 young suspected rebels in Tacloban City. The group on Wednesday held a press briefing in Tacloban City to denounce the lies of the CPP-NPA on the arrest of the so-called Tacloban 5. Some of the 5 young activists were nabbed in a pre-dawn raid on February 7 for illegal possession of firearms and explosives. Government forces arrested Frenchie May Cumpio, Mariel Domequil, Alexander Philip Abinguna, Marisa Cabalhao, and Mira Legion at the alleged communist terrorist group's safe houses. The suspects yielded 2 caliber 45 pistols, 2 magazine assemblies, and 14 live ammunitions for caliber 45 pistols, 2 fragmentation grenades, a red flag with CPP-NPA symbol, and over $500,000 pesos in cash. Those arrested are active members of militant groups linked to the NPA. Hands Off Our Children founder Gemma Labsan recalled the death of 14 teens who were killed in an encounter between the military and NPA. She said it is a proof that there is deceptive campus-based recruitment, as it all started with student activism that leads to armed rebellion. Annabel Sabado, the organization's secretary, questioned the militant group's fundraising drive every time a young NPA member is arrested. She said the militants never helped the family of young recruits as their intention is to raise funds for the communist terrorist group. Her son Christian Sabado was captured by government troops in northern Samar last year while conducting extortion activities for the NPA. On Tuesday, the Tacloban City Prosecutor's Office found probable cause in filing charges against those arrested. On to some business headlines. The coronavirus disease outbreak is seen to impact the gross domestic product of the 10 ASEAN member states and China, including Hong Kong, Japan, and South Korea, or the ASEAN Plus 3. The ASEAN Plus 3 Macroeconomic Research Office said the slowdown in China would reduce 0.2 percentage point from the GDP growth of the ASEAN Plus 3. The region is likely to see a sharp drop in Chinese outbound travel and tourism, and will also drag regional travel and tourism due to fears of contracting the disease. The public's contagion avoidance behavior will also play a role in slowing down economic activities, such as imports in the region. The AMRO said economies with a large tourism sector and a high share of Chinese visitors would be hit by the coronavirus epidemic. In the Philippines, China is the second largest source of tourists, according to the Department of Tourism. Nearly 1.5 million Chinese tourists arrived in the country in the first 10 months of 2019. The Department of Agriculture in Davao Region confirmed Wednesday that 2 villages in Davao del Sur under tight watch for African swine fever have been found positive of the animal disease. The first case of ASF in the province was found positive of the virus after taking the blood samples of pigs from Barangay Palili and Barangay Laperas, both in Sulop Town. Earlier, the Provincial Veterinary Office implemented a lockdown in Barangay Solong Valley, Palili, and Laperas in Sulop, and also in Barangay Aplaya in Hagonoy Town. Dr. Russell Celis, the provincial veterinarian, assured that the provincial government is doing all measures to contain the spread of the disease to the adjacent villages. Governor Douglas Cagas expressed concern over the fate of commercial hog raisers in Davao Occidental and Davao del Sur. The DA has offered 5,000 pesos per head to the hog raisers whose pigs will be subjected to culling and extermination. Meantime, the DA has urged backyard raisers not to feed their pigs with leftover foods, which is known to cause the spread of the disease. Baguio City's hospitality industry has reported losses following the cancellation of major events this month. This after authorities have discouraged holding big public activities due to the threat of the COVID-19. More on this and other news from the provinces from Joyce Goodies.
Baguio City's hospitality industry is feeling the brunt of the cancellation of major events and gatherings due to the continuous threat of the COVID-19. Andrew Pinero, spokesperson of the Hotel and Restaurant Association of Baguio, said that establishments have been doing their best to fill in the gaps from the losses incurred. Some hotels have come up with promo rates and Valentine specials to encourage people to book reservations. Pinero assured tourists that accommodation establishments in the city are prepared and ready to respond to emergencies. In Pangasinan, the Sangguniang Panlalawigan has passed a resolution urging local officials to discourage crowd-throwing gatherings as well as cancel planned events in their jurisdictions amid the threat of COVID-19. The resolution was in line with the Department of Health advisory urging the public to refrain from participating and organizing events with a huge number of attendees. The Department of Education Regional Office 1 has earlier postponed the staging of the Region 1 Athletic Association meet, which is supposedly scheduled from February 19 to 26. Meanwhile, the European Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines Southern Mindanao Business Council said Wednesday that the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region and Muslim Mindanao Investment Conference has been cancelled. ECCP SMBC Executive Director Antonio Peralta said they decided to cancel the March 31 BARM Business Conference because of the coronavirus disease. Peralta said their decision came after Mayor Sara Duterte canceled all major activities lined up for the 83rd araw ng Davao celebration next month. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Joyce Cudis.
More stories from the newsroom. The PCOO seeks an 80% success rate in processing EFOI requests by 2022. And authorities identify a new person under investigation for COVID-19 infection in Negros Oriental. Back after a quick break, stay with the PNA Newsroom.
Okay, going back to to the visa procedure, you mentioned that there's a treaty about simplification of the visa procedures. Can you please elaborate? I mean, is it about the processing days, or
it's
are
about
are you open to, or is Russia open to make it multiple entry visa, or what?
Well, it's about simplification. So there are going to be much less requirements for Filipinos who want a Russian visa. Actually, we're also looking at opening a visa center in the Philippines, so it's going to make the application for the Russian visa more accessible.
How many days?
And at the visa center, for now it's 1 week processing and 2 weeks processing, but we're always flexible. We look at when people actually have their flight to Russia, so we try to accommodate people as much as we can.
Yeah.
In some cases, although it takes some doing, people get their visas in 1 or 2 days.
The Presidential Communications Operations Office aims to achieve an 80% success rate in processing electronic Freedom of Information requests by the end of the Duterte administration in 2022. In a briefing with the House Committee on Public Information, PCOO Assistant Secretary Christian Ablan reported that the number of successful requests has increased from 41% in 2017 to 47% in 2019. He also noted an increase in the number of government offices in the EFOI portal from 15 agencies in 2016 to 447 in 2019. Ablan cited that the FOI compliance in 2019 for national government agencies already reached 100%, government-owned and controlled corporations at 92%, state universities and colleges at 96%, and local water districts at 41%. Meanwhile, the number of FOI requests reached over 54,000. Executive Order Number 2 on FOI allows a Filipino citizen to request any information about the government transactions through official website www.foi.gov.ph. Moving to world headlines, authorities in Wuhan, the epicenter of the COVID-19 coronavirus disease, have mobilized more than 34,000 officials, government workers, and Communist Party of China members to fight the epidemic. The latest round of mobilization came at a time when the city's community workers were caught short-handed when combing communities in search of confirmed and suspected patients of the virus. Wuhan, now on lockdown to contain the COVID-19, has reported over 18,000 confirmed cases of the coronavirus infection. On Monday, Chinese President Xi Jinping vowed to win the people's war against the pneumonia epidemic. Xi expressed confidence that China can certainly obtain a full victory in the fight against the epidemic. The provincial government of Negros Oriental has reported its 9th person under investigation for the 2019 novel coronavirus or COVID-19. The 9th PUI is a Filipino woman from Bayawan City who has a history of travel to Hong Kong and had exhibited respiratory symptoms such as cough. She is now at the Negros Oriental Provincial Hospital after 8 others were earlier cleared of the viral disease. Governor Romel Degamo said that while the 8 PUIs were already released this past weekend, they will still await from the second confirmatory tests from the Research Institute for Tropical Medicine. Meanwhile, 4 other Filipinos in Bayawan City are categorized as persons under monitoring after their recent return from a trip to Taiwan. The 3 foreigners, 1 Polish and 2 Chinese nationals who were last week categorized as PUMs, respectively, were cleared for departure either via Cebu or Manila. And before we go, the 403rd Peacemaker Brigade has welcomed Colonel Ferdinand Barandon as their new commander. Barandon vows to lead the brigade as they continue the government's fight against insurgency and terrorism.
Colonel Ferdinand Barandon was officially installed as the new commander of the Philippine Army's 403rd Infantry Peacemaker Brigade in a change of command held Monday at the headquarters of 403rd Brigade. Colonel Barandon replaced Brigadier General Edgardo de Leon, who was assigned at the General Headquarters of the Armed Forces of the Philippines or AFP as Deputy Chief of Staff for Civil Military Operations. In his message, Colonel Barandon urged members of the Peacemaker team to continue to press on with the fight to end local communist armed conflict while leaving the door for reconciliation open to more members to rejoin the mainstream society.
We shall continue the momentum of our campaign and bring the fight to the rear of our adversaries' battle lines, which are the guerrilla bases. We shall also protect our gains by continuously and steadfastly shielding the people and their communities who were previously radicalized by communist ideologues.
Admitting that the Army cannot do the fight against insurgency alone, Colonel Barandon also implored all 403rd Brigade stakeholders and partners to collaborate and continuously fuel their enthusiasm and trailblazing efforts on ending local communist armed conflict through the regional and local task forces. Meanwhile, Brigadier General De Leon expressed gratitude to all the partners of the 403rd Brigade for making the convergence efforts against the CTG success.
Your trust and confidence has driven me to persevere against the many challenges that I face as a commander. We must all make our convergent efforts for delivery of basic services a reality to prevent them from getting back the people's sympathy.
The turnover ceremony was presided by Major General Franco Nemesio Gacal, commander of the 4th Infantry Division, Philippine Army, based in Cagayan de Oro. For the PNA Newsroom, Retchi Paculba, Philippine Information Agency, Cagayan de Oro.
Let's take another look at today's biggest stories. Malacanang expects ties between the Philippines and the United States to remain warm despite the cancellation of the Visiting Forces Agreement. President Duterte vows to prevent any possible abuse of privileges by the Philippine media. Senator Francis Tolentino wants indigenous peoples to have a fair chance to be part of the police and military. And authorities identify a new person under investigation for COVID-19 infection in Negros Oriental. Thank you for watching another episode of the PNA Newsroom. To check more news content, check our webpage or head on to the Philippine News Agency's Facebook and Twitter accounts. For more stories about the government and how it serves Filipinos, look for these hashtags in all of our social media platforms and websites. We are shown on the pages of the PCOO and its attached agencies. Also, watch us on television on PTV4 and IBC 13. And that's your daily dose of the biggest stories that you need to know from the PNA Newsroom. I'm Bench Bondok. Good evening.